Spomínaná kniha, ktorú by si mal prečítať každý podnikateľ. No a už prichádza na pódium, dámy a páni, doktor Tom Deans.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you very much. I'd like to begin with a quick show of hands. How many founders in the room? Quick show of hands. Founders. Okay. G2, second generation. Interesting. G3. 3, 4. G4. None? In a moment, you will see why I'm asking that question. I want to begin by sharing a little bit of my own family business story, only to frame an operating philosophy that has guided 4 generations of our family. But I want to prepare you. What I'm about to share is very different. For some of you, it will be contrarian. For some of you, it will be controversial. But I want to make space for you to disagree with me. I don't pretend to have a hold on the truth or the absolute knowledge and wisdom on how to transition a family business. I am only going to share a perspective that has guided our family for over 100 years. My family business story starts on the east coast of Canada in the 1920s. My great-grandfather had a tire distribution business. My grandfather worked with him. He didn't love that business, and it was sold. My grandfather inherited. He was a chemist by training. He started a chemical manufacturing business in his garage in Montreal. That grew to be our largest family business. My father worked in that business. He did not love that business. That business was sold for over $100 million. My father inherited. In 1973, he started a plastics company, a company that I joined at the age of 37 after starting a career in banking, a business that I ran as CEO for 8 years, a business that we sold on February 8th, 2007. For those of you who can't cast your mind back, that was about 15 minutes before the world ended. Does anyone see a pattern? And we're not that smart. We were lucky. Does anyone see a pattern in our family, aside from the fact that we can't keep a job? We start family businesses, we involve our family, we scale them. But not once over the course of 4 businesses have we gifted a family business to the next generation for free. Not only for free, we have never gifted the voting shares at a discount. All of the internal transactions in our family, including the one that I did, I was purchasing my father's business at full market value based on a third-party valuation. It is tough love. Every single family business in this room was born from love. We don't invite our children into our businesses because we don't love them. We want them to experience the joy as founders, experience the joy in creating something from nothing, building, working shoulder to shoulder. We know from numerous studies, academic studies, that family businesses will outperform non-family business competitors in every major metric that matters. Sales growth, margin. And yet, the most important metric of all, longevity, family businesses are pulling up short. We heard the statistic from the Williams Group. 70% failure rate roughly between G1 and G2. 70% failure rate. And of that 70% that fail, 30% survive. 10% of the 30% make it to the 3rd generation. So stated differently, for those founders who put up your hand, you have a 3% chance of your grandchildren owning and operating your business. I tell business owners all the time, wherever I'm traveling, particularly in the U.S., if they love to gamble, save your airfare. You don't need to go to Vegas. Just get up in the morning and go to your office. You're in the biggest casino of your life. And what are you gambling with? You're gambling with your most valuable asset. How do I know? Because I do what my father did, what my grandfather did, what my great-grandfather did. What do you people do when you finally turn a profit after years of struggling and risking family money and personal savings and bank debt? You finally turn a profit. What do? Do you pull it out and buy a Porsche? 15-year-old car? 13-year-old car. What do we do with our profits? we pump it back into the business. We become our own lenders. We buy our own buildings. We capitalize our own bit. We fund our own receivables. We fund our inventory. Now, why do we do that? I'll tell you why. Because entrepreneurs are chasing something that's far more intoxicating than making money. What are they really chasing? Freedom, independence, the ability to get up in the morning and design your day, your week, your month, your life. That is why we do what we do. That is why we reinvest profits. And quite frankly, it is not a bad strategy when you're in your 20s. It's not a bad strategy to reinvest your profits year after year after year when you're in your 40s. But I can tell you that when you move into your 50s or your 60s or your 70s or your 80s, and you've got 80 or 90% of your family wealth wrapped up in one illiquid stock called your family business, you are in a very, very dangerous place. So there we have it. We're chasing control and freedom and independence, and yet at a moment in time, that becomes a dangerous idea. We know that family businesses outcompete non-family businesses up until a point. And the qualities that give family businesses competitive advantages, trust, family secrets, working for legacy, honor, become the very qualities that twist and contort and become competitive disadvantages. Family businesses born out of love, easy to start, optimistic and hopeful. Over time, they become difficult to manage. As children become adults, they crave the very thing that founders craved. What was that? Control, independence, freedom. And the very qualities that gave that business competitive advantages contort and they become competitive disadvantages. Why? Because families struggle to find that moment in time for control to shift. The shift of control is succession planning. When I talk about succession planning, most people in their minds rush to management. They think of management succession planning. They think of when operational control will change. That is relatively straightforward. You know, start your child off in the warehouse, move them through into production, move them through into sales and admin and finance. That's management succession planning. Easy. What I'm talking about today is the elephant in the room. When and how does voting control shift in family businesses? It was very interesting in a couple of the presentations to hear voting control shift while they're still alive. That is rare. The vast majority of controlling shares will transition on death. Death has always been the triggering event for the intergenerational transition of a family business. We simply had to wait for someone to die. Now think of the cognitive dissonance with that little idea. I love my father, but I really want to be in control of this business, and the only way that I get control is for him to die. That is where we find ourselves. 90%. This is country 29. Whether I'm speaking in Kuala Lumpur, El Salvador, Honduras, doesn't matter. Wherever I'm speaking, family ownership is the predominant ownership structure. Family businesses are not going away. In fact, they're increasing in numbers. And yet the paradox is they don't last. Because we have struggled with the transition of the voting shares transitioning. In our family, I can tell you, and I come from a very odd family. I was actually buying shares in my father's business 7 years before I joined as an employee. In our family meeting, I'm 63 years old, I've been to 58 consecutive family meetings. I was roughly 5 years old when I joined our first family meeting. At that family meeting, my father opened up his income statement, his balance sheet, talked about his business, and asked my brother and I if we would like to buy shares in the business. And he had just had a valuation of the business conducted, so we knew what the values were. And so my older brother decided not to go that route. I took some personal savings and some bank debt, and I accessed some family money, family bank, and I bought my first round of shares. A year later, my father in the family meeting issued a dividend. And I took that dividend and more personal savings and more bank debt, and I bought more shares and more shares. And the next year, more shares. After 5 consecutive years of buying shares at full market value, my father put me on the board of directors. 2 years later, he hired me as CEO. I want you to think about this. In my family, I was a shareholder first, a director second, and an employee third. Not an accident. In our family, we separate equity from managerial or operational control. It is the number one hazard that number one mistake that family businesses make. They conflate the two. There is a tremendous amount of exploitation in family businesses. The rising gen working below market wages. And then maybe they muster the courage to complain about their salary or their compensation. And what are they often met with? The founder who says, relax. Relax. Take a deep breath. Because one day, all of this will be yours. Do you see what just happened at that moment? We conflated employment income with equity. Now, there's no real conversation that usually ensues about when that equity will transition or at what price. It is just a kind of a hollow promise. It used to be that business founder, back in the 1950s, the mortality rate was 72. Fast forward to 2025, it's 82. Those large families that we had in the 1940s and 1950s, 4 children, 6 children, 8 children. My wife came from a family of 4. Her mother came from a family of 12. We had 2 children. Smaller families, and we're living longer. This is creating a new dynamic, a fresh dynamic, a real problem when it comes to succession planning. We have fewer successors, fewer heirs, fewer talented heirs to choose from. To illustrate this point, let me just share a very, very brief story. When my book, which you're going to receive at the end of this presentation, was first launched, I was doing a large media tour, and I did a national radio phone-in show. Millions of listeners. And as you would expect, the next day I generated a lot of email traffic, a lot of phone calls, and I took a phone call from what turned out to be a billionaire. And I knew that the 12 questions in my book are fabulous to help families start a conversation about the transition of voting shares. But I was really curious to see how the 12 questions would work with a billion-dollar company. And he said, could we meet? He said, we're a family in transition, which is always code for we're seriously screwed up. And I said to him, look, and this is a great reminder, I am not a consultant. So if you hear something in today's presentation and you want more, do not call me. Call these guys. These guys are really good at family meetings and governance, really good. And Monica, she is brilliant. That's not what I do. But I was curious and I agreed to meet him, and I was escorted to this magnificent oak boardroom, paneled boardroom, and beautiful art. And in shuffled this really old gentleman with a copy of my book. He shuffles in and he starts telling me about his business. And I said, look, hang on. Before you go much further, why don't you invite your son in and we can have this conversation together? And he looked at me and he said, I am the son. My 95-year-old father will be here shortly. Folks, this is where we're heading. Death used to be the triggering event for the intergenerational transition of a business. We had to wait for someone to die. In fact, we usually had to wait for 2 people to die. In America, women live 6 years longer than men. Who are the first inheritors? Women. Women. Are inheriting every single day in Canada and the United States. They're inheriting shares in the family business, controlling interests from their predeceased husband. And it is not going well. They may have some operational knowledge, but not a lot. And competitors are picking off those family business for pennies on the dollar. In fact, if you want to take all of my comments and flip them upside down and scale your business quickly through acquisitions, look for old family businesses with lots of family members. There is chaos. You'll purchase it at pennies on the dollar. You'll get it at a discount. Most of them are not here today. They should be. Most of them are not investing in their own education. They're not investing in succession planning. They are not doing the work. This is the most difficult and vexing problem any family business owner will have to deal with in your life. It makes making money and growing a business look like child's play. Getting out, transitioning a business is emotional. It's difficult. When I sold that business on February 2007, and then subsequently wrote this book, I got to tell you, it was deeply shocking and emotional. I love that company. I can't get it back. It's gone. But in that transaction, I had a liquidity event. When I joined the family business, my father put in place compensation that allowed me to create wealth, to earn wealth from that liquidity event. Why don't most family businesses sell? Because mom and dad get rich and junior loses their job. We have family business owners who invite their children into their business, and then we say metaphorically they paint themselves into a corner. They don't know how to get out. How do you sell a family business when your children are deriving an income, a lifestyle? So what do? You do what most family businesses do. They chase the longevity of their business. The longevity of the business supersedes the earnings, the blind spots around that business, the vulnerabilities. People stop looking at the risks to that business, and they pursue its longevity. I think it's dangerous. There is nothing more heart-wrenching than watching a business owner in their 70s or 80s or 90s lose their fortune because they've waited too long to really articulate their succession plan. This is not a personal view. This is not a visceral sense of the risks to business. This is data. Of the 100 largest firms in America, according to Forbes, of the 100 largest firms in America, not 100 random firms in America in the year 1900, of the 100 largest firms in America, how many do you think were still in business in the year 2000? Now, before you answer, consider this. That list of 100 largest firms contains monopolies and oligopolies. They're big, they have market share, they have brand, they have access to the best managerial talent in America. Take a wild guess how many were still standing in the year 2000. A generation's 25 years, 4 generations. Anyone? 16. 16 of America's 100 best in breed. 16 were standing 4 generations later. There has always been an enormous amount of wealth destruction in the modern economy, and yet few academics study wealth destruction. Few academics study family business wealth destruction. Most of us focus on entrepreneurial success. We want to replicate that. The real wisdom, the real lessons are actually baked into failure. And businesses fail, and they fail fast. As a Canadian, let me share a couple of modern examples. Who here used to own a BlackBerry? At the height of the market, BlackBerry had 60% of the mobile phone market, global. Guess what their current percentage is? 0. They're out of business. They're not in that business. Gone. Nortel was Canada's largest company at one point. It represented 35% of the trading volume on our stock exchange. Gone. Does anyone know the biggest bankruptcy in the history of the planet? Don't feel bad if you don't. I was speaking recently in Chicago to a whole room of bankers, and they didn't know. And that's a little clue. Anyone? Lehman Brothers, $691 billion failure. Remember, there's 1,000 million and a billion and 1,000 billion and a trillion. That was almost $1 trillion failure in an economy at that time that was only 16 trillion large. You want to know why Lehman's rocked the world? You see, the mythology in the family business world is if we get older and if we get bigger, we can self-insure and guarantee our longevity. In that list of the top 10 bankruptcies is Washington Mutual, $330 billion failure. Enron. Texaco, there's a big global brand, global reach, old, gone. The reality is, every single business in this room has a beginning, middle, and an end. I know we have some lawyers in the room. Lawyers will tell you that when we incorporate, we notionally put that corporation as a human, as a person. It resides between us and our customers and limits our liability. And so when we incorporate, we give birth to our corporation. And anything that is born will one day say it. It's incredibly liberating. It will die. This is a really difficult part of my speech. This is not a commentary on what you've created. In fact, I know you're extremely proud of what you've created. We have been led to believe that our real legacy is our business. Let me ask you a question. Someone might know. Who is the founder of Coca-Cola? Oh, interesting. No one? When I'm giving speeches with 1,000 people, 2,000 people, I ask this question rhetorically. It's the same answer. Crickets. No one knows. No one's even Googling it. Don't ask me. I keep forgetting to Google it myself. I have no idea. Third most valuable consumer brand in the world. No one knows who the founder was. No one cares. I'm here to tell you today that your business is not your legacy. It's a hard message to convey. But it does beg the question, if your business is not your legacy, what is? For those of you who came with your parents or you brought your children, look to your left, look to your right. I think it's your family. Tires, chemicals, plastics, publishing. I have 2 children, married 34 years, they're 31, 32 years old. I've asked them recently in our family meeting whether or not they want to risk their capital and buy my publishing company at full market value. What do you suppose they said? No, they're doing their thing. In the early days, I thought that it was the wealth created from the sale of a family business that was the legacy. And even I got it wrong. You see that if you have a founder and they sell the business, and they have 2 children, and they inherit, and those 2 children have children, maybe they have 4 each, not even the sale of a family business will keep pace with the growth in the progeny. The progeny grows exponentially. In order for families to create dynastic or intergenerational wealth, they have to pass something equally valuable as money. What is that? Entrepreneurship. A love of risk. A love of risk. The founders in this room, you did one thing unique. You risked. You risked time, you risked capital, you risked relationships, you built something from nothing. And then what do we do with our own children? We deny them the very one thing that you did that makes you truly and wholly authentic. Our family requires the rising generation to take risk. Lots of it. Lots of risk, always, because that is the essence of entrepreneurship. It's usually at this point in my speech where I can see the next generation kind of a little uncomfortable with my message that I'm sharing today, because a lot of them thought, well, boy, all I thought I had to do was kind of hang around and get the business for free. You see, free is an economic incentive. We often get the family that we design with the economic incentives that we put in place. In fact, if we're avoiding real conversations, we leave family members with the impression that if they leave the family business, they will be disinherited. The only path to real wealth is to participate in the family business. Now, I don't know about you, but that's anathema to the culture of our family. Where even the unborn would be making plastic one day, we were in polyethylene sheet extruder. No, not in our family. This is a different idea. It is an idea that actually feels difficult and hard and tough for the rising generation. It is actually one of the kindest, most empathetic gifts that we can give that rising generation, giving them the freedom and access to family money to go off and create businesses that are authentic and aligned with their own talents and vision. That is one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children. Access to our personal and professional networks, access to our cash, a family bank model. I'm making the case that, in fact, a family business is not a building with your name on it. A family business is a set of values, a love of entrepreneurship, a love of risk-taking. If we can imbue that next generation with a love of that, now you're creating dynastic wealth. It is a beautiful idea, born from family conversations and facilitated family meetings with the help of trusted advisors. Please do not try to do this on your own. You can't. There are too many moving parts. Reach out, get support, build a team, accountants, lawyers, family business consultants. You need all of that. You are playing with your largest asset. If you can read the book, Every Family's Business, go through the 12 questions, ask these questions. Some families go out to dinner and they tackle one question per dinner. At the end of those 12 questions, you will answer the fundamental question. Do you have a buyer in the house? Do you have a family member who wants to risk their cash, their capital, their inheritance enough to run and own that business? Yes or no? There's no wrong answer, just clarity. If you can do that, I can assure you it was worth the 20-hour flight from Canada to join you today. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you.
Nech sa páči, poď si
Okay.
sadnúť. Máme milión otázok. A vy?
Would you like
OK, takže Monička, nech sa páči.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Všetko, čo som si písala, podľa mňa môžem teraz v tomto momente. OK, tak.
Okay.
Perfect. Yes, OK. Tak poďme teda na to. Poďme teda na to. Tom, otvoril si viacero, podľa mňa, tém a takých, ja tomu vždy hovorím, že to je taká komoda s viacerými šuflíkmi a myslím si, že sa nám tu pootvárali nejaké šuflíky, ale zároveň sa nachádzame na Slovensku, kde je otázka toho, že predáme podiely alebo akcie našim nástupcom, nie je úplne vždy ako keby tá myšlienka, s ktorou prichádzame a keď vítame nástupcov vo svojej firme. A nie každý prijíma túto tému. A predpokladám, že táto sála sa teraz rozdelila na také dve časti. Prvá časť hovorí, zaujímavé, a druhá, akože toto nemyslí vážne. Hej? Takže chcem sa spýtať teda, čo sa stane s rodinou a s biznisom, keď miesto daru príde na rad predaj?
So I should have been, I was very limited with time, but really what I want to share is this notion of the family meeting. That is where we can access cash, family cash, to purchase shares. So that's the number one question I get. This is a great, lovely philosophy, but where do children get the money to buy their parents' business? They get it from their parents. They're accessing living money, living gifts. So this is different from the idea of transitioning wealth on death. So what I'm finding, and my research bears this out, is that most next gens, that's not what they want to do. I often will say to people, if you gave your children a 10,000 euro gift, $10,000. They can do anything they want with it. And then ask them if they want to return that money in exchange for 10,000 euros in value in stock in the family business. Would they do that? And guess what the children do? They take the money. The business is not their dream. Some do, and that's good. That's a great way of authenticating whether or not the rising generation shares the passion and a belief in their own talent to take that business and grow it.
Áno, máme také firmy na Slovensku, ktoré sú známe tým, že prešli tým, že mohol si nástupca vlastne firmu čiastočne po čiastkách kúpiť. Ale ty máš otázku na to, že odkiaľ teda asi ten nástupca má mať na to peniaze. Takže poďme na to.
Ja by som sa teda chcela opýtať, úžasná prezentácia, naozaj vidno, keď je niekto profesionálny speaker.
Áno.
To v tom teda gratulujem. Za mňa otázka. Včera sme dlho diskutovali, že sme na Slovensku. Sú tu slovenské pomery. My nemáme rodinné banky. Firmy, väčšina, aj tu, čo sú, nemajú ten kapitál taký, že teraz dám dieťaťu sumu na to, aby odkúpil ten podiel. Takže moja otázka na teba je, ako by si navrhoval nejaké modely, ako postupne tie deti aj nabádať ku kúpe, ako ich tomu vychovávať, lebo mali sme tu prednášku, že je strašne dôležité to vzdelávanie tých detí k tom podnikateľskému duchu. A akým spôsobom by si teda na slovenské pomery namodeloval ten predaj?
Yeah, so if there's not a lot of equity or liquidity to make living gifts of cash, to do what I just described, then focusing on entrepreneurship, inviting children into the business at junior levels, encouraging them to get work experience outside the family business early on. I had a career in banking before joining the family business. I always felt that I would have a career after the family business. So I never kind of saw the family business as a kind of a landing place for 30 years until my children were old enough and then we could transition to them. We have a very different relationship to our business. It is an instrument of wealth creation. Which is not to say that, we don't run a compassionate business. We were a profit-sharing company. We shared 12% of pre-tax profits with our employees. My father taught me that. So we built compassionate businesses, but we also knew, for example, my company, plastics, you either had to become a billion-dollar company, scale, or you had to get out. And that moment was 2007. And so we could have gone down the road and said, the business is my father's legacy. We will never sell. It will always remain in family hands. But in fact, we did not. We kind of looked at the market, and it was a little window that was closing. And we took that, and then we made that move from operating company to broadly diversified holding company. So now we hold shares in hundreds of companies. So oil goes up, gold goes down, euro goes up, American dollar goes down. We are hedged globally across sectors, across industries. That was taught. That is entrepreneurship at the holding company level. So that was taught and reinforced at the family meetings at an early age.
Takže...
Yeah, we've always kind of had this idea that every business has a beginning, middle, and end. And the smartest, most successful families have understood when to get in and when to get out. And the only way to determine when to get out is to ask yourself, do you want to risk capital to buy more shares or to reinvest money back into the business, to recapitalize it? And if the answer comes back, no, you don't want to recapitalize, right? There's only two ways to grow your business, right? Debt or equity. So if you lose confidence in either one, you don't need a consultant to tell you where your business is in its life cycle. You're nearing the end. You're losing confidence in your business. So what I'm saying is you need to act on that.
Máme tu jednu otázku a Monika, potom ti odovzdávam slovo. Tom len veľmi krátko, jednou, dvoma slovami. Takže otázka znie, dostávali vaše deti vreckové iba tak, alebo si ho museli zaslúžiť? A potom ideš ty, Moni.
So when our children are young, at a real, like 5, 6, we're making very small cash amounts. And we kind of have a family constitution that talks about the importance of saving, the importance of philanthropy, the importance of religion. So these are lessons that we use money to reinforce these lessons. So we do budgeting lessons. We teach budgeting at a really young age. We teach our children advanced financial concepts like spend less than you make,
Okay.
the power of compounding interest. We have forgotten to teach our children these financial concepts. Studies show that families are eating fewer and fewer meals together. This is where families learned. So this is something that we've always focused on. I can tell you, in my second book, I deal with the subject of wills and estate planning. 127 million Americans don't even have a will. Half of all lawyers in America don't have a will. 15 million Canadians don't have a will. We are, as a culture, we are incredibly sloppy and reckless in preparing the next generation for the phenomenal amounts of wealth that we have created. We are so focused on creating wealth, we have really cast an eye away from understanding the impact that wealth will have on the next generation. And it will do one of two things. It will release potential or it will accelerate demise. It never equivocates. It will do one or the other.
Takže ty v podstate navrhuješ, že nevychovávať deti len do toho operatívneho biznisu, ktorom podnikáme teraz, ale prehlbovať v nich toho podnikateľského ducha, aby tie rodinné peniaze, keby aj niečo s tým operatívnym biznisom sa stalo, vedeli použiť v inom biznise.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So yes, we really do not get wedded to one business. We understand the history of commerce. The history of commerce is littered with failures. Our son is actually quite conservative. We've actually had to teach him to make bigger bets, to take bigger risks in his ventures, which sounds counterintuitive. You figure if you have access to free money, you would be reckless. Actually, there's a lot of conservatism in families of affluence. So some children are too risky, some need more encouragement to take risks. Both are something that we focus on in our family. But risk is at the center of everything. That is the essence and the very essence and the first principle of wealth creation and wealth protection.
Toto je ideálna situácia. Čo v prípade, že niektoré z tých detí naozaj nie je podnikavec a netrúfa si, nemá tie danosti, na konci nie je to naša genetika, čo sme odovzdali, takže nemôžeme im to vyčítať. Čo v takom prípade?
Well, I think that's the most important question today. I think that is probably the most common scenario in most family businesses. It is statistically almost impossible to imagine that the next generation will be, just by virtue of our genetics, a carbon copy of ourselves. In fact, we come at this completely opposite and say we assume our child is different. And then we create an environment to allow them to express their uniqueness, to go off and create businesses. But if they don't want to create businesses, I don't know why we would create economic incentives to make them love our business under the threat of being disinherited. So, like, we are looking for risks to our management, to our leadership, to our strategy, and the best way of finding the next generation is to ask them to risk their own money. There's no shortcut. There's a lot of people who will feign interest in their parents' business because that's where the family money is. Do you know who one of my largest supporters, fan was when I joined the family business? My brother. Think about this. I go to a bank, I borrow money, I give it to my parents. I do that year after year. The company is growing, the share price is going up. Because we have family meetings, we have a copy of my parents' will. We can see that we're equal beneficiaries of their estate. As I'm running my family business and growing it, my brother is saying, "Go, Tom, go." Sibling rivalry? Not in our family. Because there's no shortcuts. You want to own a family business, you need to buy it. No discounts. So I had skin in the game. My brother knew that I was running that business because I had lots to lose. I get into lots of debates with business owners who give their employees shares. And I say, why would you give them shares? And they say, because I want my employees to think and act like an owner. And I say to them, the shares don't make someone think and act like an owner. The debt makes them think and act like an owner.
Ja mám rýchlo, ti musím dať musím sa rýchlo opýtať, pretože máme ešte 2 knihy pred sebou. Tu jednu dostanú. Bola na obrázku, ja som mu zabudla na stole, ja sa ospravedlňujem. Máte ju všetci ako darček, každá rodina, keď budete odchádzať v taštičke. Takže odporúčam prečítať, ale máme ešte ďalšie 2. Takže veľmi rýchlo, lebo už nám čas ubehol, Erika ešte povolila, lebo vie, že ľudí to zaujíma. Takže druhá kniha je Múdra posledná vôľa. Ja kvôli tebe som bola spísať poslednú vôľu. A strašne dôležitý odkaz tej knihy je, že deti o tej aspekty tej poslednej vôle sa nemajú dozvedieť počas dedického konania, ale majú byť informované práve pri písaní tej vôle, aby ich nič neprekvapilo, aby tá rodina sa nezhadala, lebo však môže to byť, aby oni boli tvorcovia, ako keby spolutvorcovia tej poslednej vôle. Takže ak môžeš trošku, čas nám pobehol na 30 sekúnd, druhú knihu povedať highlighty.
That was a great summary. I think this notion of keeping inheritances secret is causing tremendous family damage. Most people learn their parents' will on death, when they're grieving. When they're grieving, they're learning that someone got more. Someone is aggrieved, and they're grieving. The courts in America and Canada are full of families fighting over family businesses, fighting over vacation homes, fighting over art collections, wealth, because they're learning way too late. I have given many dozens of presentations inside family meetings, healthy families that are building estate plans collaboratively and transparently. A recent one in Chicago, 17 family members, 3 generations. Monica, do you know who was chairing the meeting that day? It was a 15-year-old girl. They rotate the chair around the family. They sit at a round table. Try to find the power source at a round table. It's democratic. The family meeting is designed to relinquish control over wealth, not to use wealth to control the decisions of adult children.
Super.
That's what that book deals with.
A tretia kniha, veľmi rýchlo, Šťastný dedič. V podstate nadväzuje na tú poslednú vôľu a prvý diel, že proste deti máme vychovávať k tomu, aby vedeli prijať zodpovednosť za ten podnik, aj za tú rodinu a za tie vzťahy v rodine. Takže čo by si k tomuto povedal ako highlighty tejto knihy a prečo si ju majú kúpiť?
Yeah, so the Happy Inheritor really gets into the subject of family meetings in detail. What do they look like? Who would you invite to the first family meeting? What issues would you tackle? In what order? What are some of the pitfalls to avoid? How do you develop a family constitution? The importance of confidentiality, the importance of transparency, the importance of raising financially responsible and financially fit children. This is all counter culture. We think of the mixed message that we send our children. Go to school, work hard, get good grades. You get good grades, you go to a first-class university. You go to a first-class university, you get recruited by a first-class company, and you'll make lots of money. If you make lots of money, keep that secret from your family, because we can't talk about money. That's called cognitive dissonance. That's when we hold two ideas, both are right, but they're in opposition to each other, and it remains unresolved. Here's another one. I love my children. I want them to have all my wealth. I love my children. I cannot tell them how much money I want to leave them. Both are right. Both are wrong. What I would say is that families that can converse slowly, start to tackle these issues together as a family system, they will resolve that cognitive dissonance. They will find the answer. The answer resides between the relationship of two people, parent and next generation. And the answer, there aren't two families or two family businesses that are similar in this room. This is what makes this subject so both fascinating and difficult. But I believe that the answer is always in the room, and I know you know this. And you are really good at helping families find the answer that's right for them. It's in the room.
Presne tak. Je to
Ďakujeme
tak.
veľmi pekne.
Veľmi
Tom.
pekne ďakujeme.
Thank you.
Úžasné.
Ďakujeme krásne. Tom Deans.